Guys, David Vose here. Oh boy, I'm so excited. Oh man, I know you think I'm always excited and so what? Well, you're going to say, so what here in a minute, because this is going to be literally the most important video I've made to date, in my opinion. And I think it will be your opinion after you hear it. Because, oh, friends, I hope you're having a wonderful day. It is a beautiful day here. I know you guys, some of you are concerned about me because there's floods going on in New Mexico. But, it's just like last year. Before the rain started here, and then it rained every day for 3 months. But just the sprinkles, and it was just lovely. But we never had any violent storms or anything like that. But they're having them down further, I guess, southeast of me. And a little town called Ruidoso was just wiped off the face of the earth. Oh my goodness. I guess several have died, and you saw the floods in Texas, so they're coming up and just getting into New Mexico here too. But they're not affecting me at all. But I do see some clouds finally now rolling in, and I suspect that now, maybe next week or so, we're going to start having the rains. The monsoons will finally reach up to this place. So it's going to be glorious. And not only that, we've got some information for you that's going to not just blow your mind. It's going to save you. It's going to be salvation. Now, part of the salvation we've already learned. And it's very sad, like only 500 of you have even watched that video. You need to go back and watch the video about the Ariel's Gamos. Friends, please watch it. It's so important to your understanding of what it means to have salvation. Right? And if you watch this video, and I hope more of you will see the utter importance of understanding what Ariel's Gamos is and your soulmate and all of that. But today we're going to go into it from another angle, and we're going to talk about the sacred meal. And exactly, we're going to tell you exactly the ingredients in the sacred meal, the sacrament, which was actually a Christian thing, not a Jewish thing. Yeah, Jesus did it, but he was also a Christian, wasn't he? I mean, following after John, or, Heliopolis, the city of On, or John, which was the central great religious one world truth, the temples that were spread all over the world, and some of them were in Ephesus. We've got the Eleusinian mysteries up there in Athens. And these are the ancient mysteries that were brought back again by Elias, or Elijah, and his student Elisha, which in Greek was Dionysi, and in the Hebrew is El Isi, which is the Eleusinian mysteries. And the sacrament came from that, and the holy great wedding of the woman, and we'll discuss that. And there are 7 things that were used in the sacrament to make the bread and the wine. And we're going to give you the ingredients right now. And this, if it doesn't blow your mind, you're just, I don't know, maybe you're not paying attention, or you just don't want to know. But 9.999.999 people that watch this and see this will have no other alternative but to understand this, probably for the very first time in their entire life. So we're going to share with you something that is going to change your life and make it whole, and it's going to be the path to attaining salvation for the Christians that are literally now realizing we got to get out of this world, get out of Babylon, and have all things common, and go back to the promised land and partake of the promised fruit of the land, that we might literally be at peace and have a land that's flowing with milk and honey, which is our land that comes from the garden or the paradise within us, right? The third heaven, right? Out of body, or whether in the body or out of body, I do not know, right? Paul went there. How did he go there out of body? Well, there is a sacrament, and we're going to show you literally from the scriptures the 7 ingredients. So it says, starting in verse 8, a land of wheat and barley and vines, which is grapes, fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey. Those are 7 things. A land in which you will eat bread without scarcity. What kind of bread do you eat that never goes away? Your sandals don't wear out and your clothes don't wear out, and you live forever. Ho, buddy. In which you will lack nothing. Is that the kind of land you want, friends? Well, I sure do. And not only that, you get your soulmate. Oh, buddy, it's great. And a land whose stones are iron. Huh? Yeah. Literally solid iron and copper and gold. And oh, man. I mean, not just we got 7 things that we're going to eat, right? But there's also other things like milk and honey flowing and which are not part of the 7, which, yes, it does represent the pituitary and the pineal. We'll get to that. And your body is this temple that we're going to be discussing in reality. And this temple is going to be in a paradise, right? The trees of life are out there in the garden around the city of the Lord, as it says in Revelation. And then there's this copper. It says, out of whose hills you can dig copper. And when you have eaten and are full, then you shall bless the Lord your deity for the good land which he has given you. Friends, this is a promise. Right? And the law, which came 430 years later, did not make void the promise. Right? That is a promise that the Lord made us, and he has given us the promised land. And just as they went in and were supposed to rout out the giants and take the land, we as Christians are told to go and cast out those devils and restore this temple and get rid of the money changers and those that are killing the oxen and the sheep, and make it a house of prayer, a positive house of light, a beacon on a hill. And all of it is done by simply adding to your faith virtue, and virtue knowledge, and adding to your knowledge gnosis, your experience, your self-knowledge. You find brotherly love. And finally, you get the agape, which you have when you find your soulmate. And this is a wedding. And at the wedding, there is a supper. And these are the 7 ingredients. So let's go into that and literally be filled with the greatest joy that a man can feel, which is the truth. And the truth that leads to eternal life. Here we go. AI says the Hebrew word pronounced kitah in the Bible is consistently translated as wheat. It refers to both the plant and its grain. While the Hebrew word for wheat itself hasn't changed, the characteristics of wheat cultivated in ancient Israel likely differed from modern wheat varieties. Key differences: genetic diversity. Ancient wheat varieties, often referred to as land races, were more genetically diverse than modern wheat, which has undergone selective breeding, hybridization for traits like high yield and specific baking qualities. Physical characteristics. Ancient wheat varieties might have had taller stalks, different glume structures, the husks enclosing the grain, compared to modern dwarf varieties. So the modern little grains of wheat are dwarf. Original wheat was much bigger. Isn't that interesting? Dwarf varieties we have today developed for easier harvesting and increased grain production. Processing. Ancient wheat often hold varieties like einkorn and Emmer. So the word in the Bible, wheat, probably refers to einkorn, and Emmer. Really, it looks nothing like modern wheat. And I'm going to show you what einkorn is, but it's required a dehulling process to remove the tough glumes before milling, unlike modern free threshing wheats, where the shaft separates easily during threshing. So, the meaning of the Hebrew word remains wheat. The plant itself has evolved significantly over time due to both natural and artificial selection process. So let's take a look at what this einkorn and Emmer is. So it says einkorn is a very old type of wheat, one of the first domesticated forms, with its cultivation dating back to around 8000 BCE. Wow. The name itself comes from the German and translates to single grain. Here's how it relates to modern wheat and the distinction from corn. Einkorn is a type of wheat, not corn, despite the similar sound of the names. Einkorn and corn or maize are entirely different grains and are not related botanically. A contrast with modern wheat. Einkorn differs significantly from hybridized modern wheat commonly found today. Chromosomes. Einkorn is a diploid wheat with 14 chromosomes, while modern wheat is a hexaploid with 42 chromosomes. Hybridization. Modern wheat has undergone extensive hybridization for traits like increased yield and easier threshing, while einkorn has remained largely unchanged for millennia. Gluten. Einkorn contains gluten, but its structure is simpler and potentially easier to digest for some individuals with non-celiac gluten sensitivity. It is important to note that einkorn is not gluten-free and is not suitable for individuals with celiac disease. Nutrition. Studies suggest einkorn may be more nutritious than modern wheat, containing higher levels of protein, B vitamins, carotenoids, and various minerals like iron and zinc. Historical significance. Einkorn played a crucial role in the development of agriculture and was a staple food for early civilizations in the Fertile Crescents. So that's beautiful. So basically, yeah, it's wheat, but just like everything else that we eat today, it's all hybridized, turned into some kind of poison. It's got all this gluten, and they're saying that you can't eat even einkorn if you got celiac disease. Well, if you got some kind of celiac disease, I think your gut is destroyed. And I think if you started eating this kind of grain, it would probably heal and get rid of all the other poisons. If you healed your gut, you'd be able to digest this perfectly. It's a very simple gluten that can be digested with healthy bodies. And I don't even want to make that sound like you've got to be really healthy to digest it, like it's hard to digest. I don't think it is. And I think that it was made, it's a natural, food. And it's part of the food that is the staff of life that when Jesus was on the earth, they ate along with barley and other things that we'll talk about. And it's good for you. So if you guys want to eat bread, why not? But remember what bread is. It isn't made from modern hybridized poisons, genetically modified poisons. It's made from the original einkorn. And the other variety is Emmer, and we're going to look at that. But if we made our bread with the old grains, einkorn and Emmer is one part of the thing called bread. Not the word bread as we use it today, which is some kind of a hybridized, devoid of any nutrition, stale, poison, full of gluten and all of this, but a bread that has 7 ingredients, which the Bible gives you, and which is the sacrament, which does give you communion. You always wonder, do you ever wonder why when you partook of communion, you didn't have communion? Why is it called communion? You don't have communion. How come the disciples' eyes were opened and they saw him, they understood Christ, but we don't understand Christ, right? What is going on? Why did they break bread? Every time they were together, they broke bread, right? Is it really true? Like everybody says, it's just an expression that they ate something? Well, why does it never mention they ate lamb or anything else other than they just broke bread? You know, there was honey there and stuff. They're just breaking bread all the time and drinking wine. That's all they ever ate. Well, it's because it's the food of life. There's 7 ingredients, and it's bread and it's wine, and it's not just grape, but it's also pomegranate. There's a mixture, and we'll tell you how to make it. The Bible will tell you how to make it. We're going to be able to do this. And this is what we're supposed to eat. Every day, they broke bread. And especially on the 8th day. This is Sunday, or the day of the sun, the first day of the week. Eternity, the eternal, glorious celebration, where we go into the next cycle, which is an advancement in the upper room, and we light the chakra. Oh man, you guys, this is going to be so great. Stay tuned and watch the rest of this video. And so this particular einkorn is what they used, and we'll find out they used einkorn and barley together. And there are 7 other ingredients, and it doesn't actually say what shape you got to make the bread in. You know, as a loaf, well, it sometimes says a loaf, but it didn't always say that they made a loaf. It just says these are the ingredients. That's the important part. So one could take the same einkorn and use it to make pasta, for instance. I love pasta, right? Italian food, oh, mamma mia, but it must not be made with modern wheat, the noodles. You've got to scrap that idea and go get some einkorn or Emmer and make your noodles. I mean, you can get a noodle maker. And then you can put tomatoes and spices and the meatballs and everything you like, and it will be beautiful. I guarantee it. Now, let's go look at the Emmer. Now, look at this, guys. Emmer, I think people in Italy probably know what this is. They actually make pasta from it. And it's much healthier than wheat. So, obviously, you could probably go out and buy pasta made from Emmer, and it's much healthier because remember we saw that einkorn had how many chromosomes? No, I can't remember if it was 8 or a lot less than 42. So modern wheat has 42 chromosomes, and einkorn was a small number. I don't remember what it was. Well, here Emmer has 28 chromosomes, but that's still far less than the 42. So maybe that's a sign that it's a little bit, quite a bit, like double better, way better than modern wheat. And it's a high protein wheat. It's used for pasta, bread, pilaf, and flatbread. So where can we buy some of that? That sounds like a way to go if you like pasta. Let's look into that. Yes, Italians and other Europeans do eat pasta made from Emmer, particularly in some regions of Italy. Oh, I love those Italians. Specifically, a certain Italian. Specifically in Italy, Emmer, known there as farro. Most people today will say farro, but if you look in the dictionary, it's actually farro. That's how it's pronounced. But you see, farro might be just as good because it actually is, being a sacred thing, it is the sacred grain, not just because of Judaism or something, it's not the Passover bread at all. But this is Pharaoh's wheat. That's why it's called farro. Pharaoh's wheat, the Egyptian king. And that's because it's they found it in the tombs of the Egyptian pharaohs. It's also Italian, but I mean, they named this holy bread, the Italians is the Sacrament area, right? Christianity. And they named it after Pharaoh because they understood that this priesthood goes back to the ancient pharaohs. You see, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the ancient pharaohs. And if you want proof of that, and you want proof that the holy temple is the Egyptian pyramid, just look at Isaiah 19:19. It literally says there is an altar at the center of Egypt. Northern and southern Egypt has a center right at Cairo. And in the midst, it's right there in the midst of northern and southern Egypt, right in the center, is an altar. What is an altar? It's a temple, and there is a temple unto the Lord in the center and at the border in Egypt, which is the Great Pyramid, and it's a temple unto the Lord. It's the temple unto the Lord, as we'll find out. But this Pharaoh or Pharaoh refers to three different kinds of wheat: einkorn, Emmer, and spelt. So there are three kinds: einkorn, Emmer, and spelt. And imagine you could use any one of those three, but maybe the most ancient and the best is einkorn or Emmer. It's not only used to make bread, but it's also used to make pasta and is considered of high quality for its purpose. Whole Emmer grains can also be found in most Italian supermarkets and groceries. Oh man, we gotta tell people, man. I can't believe that here we are in America. We think that pasta's not good for you. It's terrible. Well, it'll kill you. Yeah, but that's not pasta. That's some kind of slime that you've made from some kind of poison Monsanto grain that is hybridized and genetically modified. Let's get back to the actual promise, because this is the grain that was part of the promised land. Let's go get our promise, guys. Let's eat food that is healthy, okay? And let's make our bread and our pastas and everything from these healthy grains that don't have the gluten that is that complicated, undigestible kind, and that has more protein and vitamins, and that is structured, a more simple structure, not 48 chromosomes, but just 28. So it's digestible, friends. Oh man, my head spins when I think about the ignorance that we are laboring under and how it's so simple to get ourselves out of this. Because even if the grocery market continued to sell this poison, and the factories continue to make the poison, and the farmers continue to grow the poison, if we stop eating it, they'll have to stop making it. And if we go out and buy the good stuff, and it might cost a couple dollars more, but isn't it worth it to be healthy? Because, friends, it's not just your health. I mean, it changes your looks, right? You want to be cute. You want to be handsome. You want to be healthy. You want to live long. You want to be strong. You want to be happy. It affects your emotional being. There are things in these ancient grains that will literally make your body healthy and your skin vibrant and give you energy and life. One, as we've been talking about, is the omega-3 oils. It's pretty much devoid of all these hybrids, even the eggs you're getting. If you can't get chicken eggs that are from free range on your neighbor's chicken coop, if you don't have chickens, you can go to the store, and a lot of times you get Eggland's Best. It's more nutritious than the other eggs, and it really doesn't cost any more. But get you some good eggs. The kind of eggs you get at the store don't have very much omega-3. So they do have omega-3. And eggs are the perfect source of food, both with protein and cholesterol and everything, and vitamins and everything you need. But the best egg is one that's natural, where your chickens are running around eating natural things and not, being given genetically modified corn at some chicken farm. But we need the omega-3, and here's the perfect food, the 7 ingredients, one of which is the wheat and the barley, and the wheat we find is einkorn or Emmer, and it's got the omega-3 in abundance. It's a rich source of it. So it will literally repair your brain, your heart, your fatty tissues with the omega-3 and give you life. So AI says the ancient grains, einkorn and Emmer, do contain omega-3 fatty acids, but in varying amounts. Einkorn has been shown to contain omega-3 fatty acids, specifically alpha-linolenic, ALA. One study found that Triticum monococcum varsofanum, a type of einkorn, had the lowest ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids. But, however, another study found that the wild progenitor of einkorn was lower in unsaturated fatty acids compared to the domestic diploid wheat, despite a high total oil content. So you need to get the most ancient variety. And Emmer also contains omega-3 fatty acids, and its remarkable nutritional value is further enhanced by the high levels of antioxidant compounds and dietary fibers. Both einkorn and Emmer contain omega-3. Their exact content may vary depending on the specific variety and the growing conditions. The original fruits and grains and nuts have nutrients, maybe polyphenols or phytochemicals that the body is lacking and craving and literally dying for. So that's wheat. Let's take a look at the next thing that we're going to be looking for our diet, because we certainly, all of us, want to go to the land of promise, don't we? And I know that ultimately people think, oh, that's in heaven, Dave. That's all spiritual. Well, there's no restored earth promised in the Bible. Well, yes, there is. Really, we're trying to get back to paradise. And I believe this is paradise. I think it's all in the mind. We've got to change our world by changing our mind. And I think then we will be transformed in body to be still a body. Because remember when Jesus was raised from the dead, he said, touch me. A spirit doth not have flesh and bones as you see that I do. So he still had flesh and bones. The only difference is that he did not have blood. Now, what does that mean? There's not going to be any veins in our bodies and nothing, no fluid? Well, I think that there will be blood in a sense, but it will be a refined substance that will be like flowing energy, that will be so healthy and full of this this fluid of life that you will probably heal instantly. So it's like being filled with light and the flowing of energy throughout our bodies, so that our bodies are transformed into an immortal body, or at least a body that will live for thousands of years, or perhaps when we attain unto that immortality, we won't die and then be born and lose our memories, but maybe we'll just be transformed or just fly to other worlds, or we don't really know, because the Bible says we don't know what we shall be like, but we know that when we see him, we will be like him. And when he raised up from the dead, he had a physical body. And I know he lives in physical places. He went to prepare a place for us, not some ethereal nothing, right? A paradise with the trees of life. So it's flow out the wheat of the land and hills, and barley. Now, barley is a lot better for you than the wheat, and we still have modern barley, which I think is still pretty close to the original barley, but there might even be better brands or varieties, more ancient varieties of barley. I don't know. Let's go on because of the restraint of time to the next one, and what we got here is figs and pomegranates. Really? Now think about this. Just think of it. Just Think about this. When we go to the store today in this modern world, and I assume it's probably very much like this in all over the world, you will go into the produce aisle and you'll see bananas and apples and peaches and pineapples and papayas and things like this, all of which is very sweet. I mean, I love me some pineapple. I guarantee it. I love pineapple in my omelets. I like pickles in my omelets too. I was just telling my best friend. But while we love fruit and its sweetness, what did they eat in the days of Jesus and the days of BC? What were they trying to get in the promised land? Why is it that you don't really see pomegranates and figs very often in the grocery market? And then we're going to see that it mentions olive oil and honey. But pomegranates and figs are a part of the original diet that the Lord is telling us we should have. The only thing, even before we look it up, remember this: pomegranates is a rich, deep red color, much deeper and redder than grapes, although grapes are something that's in the Bible as well. But they used to make things with pomegranates, and today, if you look it up, you'll see that pomegranate juice and pomegranates are far more healthy than most of the juices and things that, I mean, if you look at a pomegranate, it's mostly just a bucket of juice, little packets, little marbles that they've got like a little marble skin, but inside that little marble is a pocket of deep red juice, which is got some kind of anti-resveratrol agent in it that is an anti-aging unit. And I don't know why people aren't just getting the pomegranates. It's so easy to just open them up, cut out the pomegranate marbles or whatever those little things are, put them in a bowl and crush them, and you've got all this juice. So let's take a look at that. What is that word? Pomegranate. The word pomegranate means to be high, lifted up, or exalted. It's an ornament in the temple, shaped like a pomegranate. So in the temple, they had these designs on the wall, and pomegranates were put all over the temple. It's some kind of a sacred symbol of exaltation. And we find this not only in the Jewish temple, but also in the temple of Artemis and other places, where we also find that it was used as an ingredient in the sacred sacraments. Ancient Israel incorporated pomegranates into aspects of temple use and religious practices. Pomegranates shaped ornaments were used to adorn the pillars of King Solomon's temple. There were 200 pomegranates engraved on the crowns of the two pillars at the front of the temple. Some sources indicate 400, but I think it's probably 200 for each pillar. And the priestly garments, pomegranate adornments alternating with bells, lined the hem of the high priest's garment. The pomegranates were made of blue, purple, and scarlet. The pomegranates were considered one of the 7 species of fruits and grains that represented the blessing of the promised land. Wow, that is so amazing. So, look at this. One of the things that we talk about is the Eleusinian mysteries. Now, this is something that people don't understand, but it is clear to me that the Eleusinian mysteries are from Elisha, and this is where we get the Eleusinian mysteries. And really, El, we all know what that means. And Isa is the word that today we use for Jesus. Isa, the us on the end or the un is just the syntax. But so we know this too because the Greek word for this temple is Dionysius. They changed the water into wine just like Jesus did. And they had this sacrament with wine. Well, Dio or Dia is deity, just like, in Greek, just like El is in Hebrew. But Dionysi, there's the Isa at the end. So this is the rites of Elijah, and he handed on, and the mantle fell on Elisha. So you see, Elisha. Now remember, Elijah is the way we pronounce it today, but his name was never Elijah. It's Elias. There was no Yah on the end. In the Septuagint, it doesn't have the Yah. So it's Elias, and Elias anointed Elisa, which is Jesus is El. And these are the mysteries then from Elijah handed down to Elisha, or Dionysius in Greek, who changed the water into wine or had this sacrament. So remember, Elias and Elisha raised the widow's son. The widow is a woman who had a covenant, but her husband died. This is the same story that we find there at Ruth and Naomi and Elimelech, Molech. Molech, most people don't at all understand that in Hebrew it meant king, but it also could be Malach or angel. And we remember Amos and Acts chapter 7, where they carried the temple of their Molech through the wilderness for 40 years and worshiped the sun and the moon and stars in idolatry. So what king? Who is Melech? Remember, Esau married into the Canaanites, and his firstborn son was Amalek, right? Melech, who is this man? Well, the seventh in line from Cain was Lamech. And when Lamech came after 7 generations, he was free from the curse, from the punishment of Cain. Lamech. And he had a daughter named Naomi, or Naamah, who married Noah. He redeemed her, and she became the mother. This is the great mother that we see in all of the rituals and sacred stories. So the flesh and the spirit are married once again, the restoration, the redemption. So if you read the story in Genesis, you'll find that though Lamech was redeemed, being the 7th, he then went out and murdered somebody again. And he said, if Cain shall be avenged 7 times, then I 70 times 7. So the curse remained then upon him. And this is then the father or the king or the fleshly king, Melech. And all the Canaanites and different ones counted their line back through Naomi, back to Lamech. And this is where we get this Amalek or Molech or the Amalekites or whatever. And the curse of Canaan comes from this curse of Lamech. So the Eleusinian mysteries were the mysteries of this widow who lost her husband. And it is the higher priesthood, or the Melech Zadok. Zadok meaning righteous. Melech is Melech, angel, Molech. It is this priesthood, the higher priesthood of the Canaanites. Remember, this great priesthood at Salem was also called Adoni-Zedek, and he was another one after Melchizedek. There was Adoni-Zedek, and there were many priests down the line. And then we got to Abimelech, or Father Molech. And there is a story about Sarah, who was not having a child. She became 100 years old because the Lord promised a child from this union. But there was no child. And they laughed. But to show you that it was a miracle that the flesh would be finally one day redeemed, a child would one day happen. And so the moment that Sarah goes and lives with Abimelech, Father Molech, and it doesn't say how long she stayed there, but she was only there a while and went back to Abraham. And when she went back, miraculously, she had a child. There is something to this promised seed, or the line of the woman's seed. There's a lot of details that we won't go into here today. But this is the northern part. Today we only know the Judean mysteries, but the temple of Bethel, which is where the 10 tribes, the northern tribes, where they worship, they were scattered to the north and up into Greece, the Dispersia, and these are the temple Aphrodite and Artemis of the continuation of the lineage of the woman, and Bethel, or the house of El. And so these mysteries were resurrected. Elijah, remember what Jesus said? Was there no widows in Israel? Why did Elijah go to Syria, or to the Philistines, or up north? And they had a widow that fed him. The food was spiritual food, the higher food that was sustaining. And so this is the truths of the higher priesthood. And so the Eleusinian mysteries, the mysteries of Dionysius, is certainly something that is paralleling and reflecting symbolically the mysteries of the higher priesthood. So Elias, or as we say Elijah, was fed by this widow from Syria, from the northern realms, from Dionysius, from this place up there by Ephesus, and today we call this Turkey, or in ancient times they called it Asia Minor. And in this area, we see both from Peter's letter and the book of Revelation and different places, we see that there were all of these Israelites that were dispersed up there. And they were all the lost tribes, part of the lost tribes of Israel. So there they had these mysteries that are destined also to again one day be brought back or restored. And the stick of Ephraim will be joined to the stick of Judah, the stick meaning something that you roll the parchment on. So it's a book, and the writings, the sacred writings. Today we have the sacred writings of Judah, and we've begun to, since about the last 200 years, we began digging up the stick of Ephraim. And Ephraim is 10 tribes and the scattered nations, right? A multitude in the earth of every man, woman, and child in every nation, tribe, and tongue. And those nations all around the circuit of Galilee, or the circuit of the nations, their books and their prophets will be eventually restored, which is Buddhism, Hinduism, Shintoism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism, and all these spiritual priesthoods that go back to Bethel, which, as we have shown you guys, is the central location, which is known by the Greeks as Heliopolis, and by the ancient Egyptians as the Temple of Ra. So these are the continuation, the Eleusinian mysteries, are the restoration of the Egyptian mysteries, restored by Elisha. And in this temple, just like the Jewish temple, they had something, they had a little basket that had these symbols in them, and we're not told what they were. But one of the things in the basket is a pomegranate. Now look at this. It says many psychoactive agents have been proposed as the significant element of the kykion, which is their sacramental drink, and the bread that they ate and broke. Now, look, you could say we don't know, but it most certainly is the sacrament. They did the glossolalia, the speaking in tongues, the ecstatic dancing, the frenzied, the love feast. And we've talked about this 1,000 times. This is the mysteries of Christianity that were not known to the Judeans because they divorced the woman and they separated from the 10 tribes. There was an apostasy. They hated the Samaritan woman by the well. Well, you got to have the well, and they got the well, right? So it was a secret. Now, the reason why it was a secret what these things were in the basket and in the drink and in the sacred meal is because they were elements that gave you a psychoactive experience. And you had to go there and they mixed it in exact proportions and they did it properly. It wasn't something that was to be used for a mundane purpose in your household. It was something that you did as a spiritual experience. They didn't want it to go out and people started abusing these sacraments. And this is actually what happened. As we see from the Bible, and we read there in Jude, and Peter talks about it in Paul, that they changed the charity or the love feast and the grace of the Lord into debauchery and sensual license. And they begin to have orgies, and they use the sacrament for improper purposes, for indulgence and to get high and then have sex. But that was a aberration of the original priesthood. This is why they kept these things secret. They weren't secret. They were just done in a way that those who were worthy and those priests that had become wise and could be trusted were entrusted with the making of these things, so they would continue to make them properly and administer them properly and not allow it to be turned into some idolatrous rite as it eventually did get turned into. But there are many people who have talked about it, people who knew about it, and they weren't allowed to say, but some of them gave us clues and told us a lot about it so that we know that there was psychoactive agents in it. And so this is telling you that they included the ergot, the Claviceps paspali, a fungal parasite of paspalum, which contains the alkaloids ergotamine, which is a precursor to LSD. We talked about that the other day. And ergovine. Modern attempts to prepare a quinine using ergot paracetalized barley have yielded inconclusive results, though Alexander Shulgin and Anne Shulgin describe ergotamine and LSA to be known to produce LSD-like effects. So, now, basically, this is a bunch of mumbo-jumbo words that you don't understand, but ergo is just mold that you find on rye and wheat, the original wheat and barley. So, now you understand what the purpose of this wheat is, the sacred food. And that's why there's 7 of these. The pomegranate is one of these sacred fruits. And we saw it there in the garden or the promised land. So what is the sacred fruit? It is the sacrament. People have been trying to find the ingredients to the ancient sacrament, and it's been there all along. It's the land flowing with milk and honey, which is the pineal, the pituitary, and in order to get those activated, it's a psychoactivated event that is done with the 7 fruits. Remember the basket that the 12 spies brought up out of the promised land? One of them was a pomegranate so large and stuff that they had to carry it out on a stick. This is simply symbolizing the abundance, not only the abundance of paradise where we're going to be and what we need. We do need fruit. We do need food, and we need it to be abundant. And the food itself literally causes the emotional high and the psychoactive high and the communion with the divine angels. And this is where we get the speaking in tongue or the tongue of angels. So we know what the 7 ingredients are. And we just read them. Pomegranates being one of them, wheat being another, But now we know that ordinary wheat ends up getting a fungus, and they knew how to turn it, and like yeast, it fermented and made it into a psychoactive ingredient. But the same is said for pomegranates. You leave juice like wine or grapes or anything out, the grape and the pomegranate has mold that grows on it that ferments and makes it. Well, the Bible says that wine makes the heart merry. Now think about it. If wine makes the heart merry, how much wine does it take you to get merry? I could drink 1 cup of wine and it makes me merry. Now, some people say, well, you're not supposed to be a drunk. Oh, it says don't be a drunkard. That's a word just like glutton. Does that mean you don't eat anymore? No, it means you don't eat to excess where you're stumbling around and you're addicted and you can't stop drinking wine until you die. That's what a glutton is. They're running around staggering drunk. They don't even know what they're doing. However, in the sacred meal, which, by the way, remember, when they had all things common, they did the sacred meal every day. This is not some holy thing done in a temple. Ye are the temple of the living deity. And this abundance must be in you. And so every day we must drink the pomegranate juice and the ergo that grows on the wheat. And we'll explain the great and sacred meal even further here in just a moment, friends. So let's go back here to Deuteronomy chapter 8, and let's take a look at the 7 things that it mentions. A land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey, a land which you will eat bread without scarcity, in which you will lack nothing. A land, what is this land? Well, it's a land of promise. So it's a paradise. It's a restored place. The world when it's restored, the world that we want to live in. It isn't in Palestine. Paradise is within you, and it's got to manifest from within you to the outside of you. The rivers of the waters of Eden flowed out from Eden, and the rivers of the water of life flow from your innermost being. But you can't get those rivers a flowing without that woman standing there dipping the water out. And she gave some to Jesus. Another woman gave some water to Moses the same way. Another one gave it to Jacob, right? Rachel, Rael, the light. Do you know why Jacob, after fighting with the law or this carnal world during the darkness all night long, finally defeated Yahweh or the avenger or death or the lower ego? You know how he defeated him? When he became one. And he became one with Rael, or the light, the ray of the light, the ray of the soul, the ray of the, S-O-L, the sun. And Rael shone over the horizon at the moment that dawn came. And Jesus was raised from the dead when Mary Magdala, the high priestess of the tower, came at dawn on the first day of the week, or the new beginning, the 8th day. And they broke bread. And this is the bread, my friend, that they ate. If you look in the story where the disciples didn't recognize Jesus on the road to Emmaus, that is another word for Heliopolis. Look it up, friends. The city of On, or the city of John. And on the road there, they were still blind and still didn't recognize the Christ within them. But they finally met the Christ on the road. Just like, people are all upset because Paul wasn't one of the original apostles that were, walking around with Jesus during his ministry. But he didn't meet Jesus until he was on the road to Damascus. Well, Paul was on the road to Ephesus and Corinth and stuff, and they had the higher priesthood there. But the central priesthood that was also brought to Ephesus and other places of the world was at Heliopolis, which is Emmaus. And the other disciples also did not recognize Jesus or the true Jesus or understand the truth. They may have been taught for 3.5 years by Jesus, but they understood nothing. In fact, Peter denied Jesus 3 times before this event. But finally, when Peter and James and John and those guys were on the road to Heliopolis, Jesus came and they broke bread. And it says, while they were breaking bread, their hearts began to burn within them, and they recognized him. Their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. They had a spiritual experience from eating the bread. It is a psychoactive experience. And the bread and the wine is a sacrament. And the bread is made and the wine from these 7 ingredients of the promised land. And they are what causes the land to be flowing with milk and honey. Right? It's what activates the pituitary and the pineal. So, you don't have to worry about your pineal gland being calcified if you're eating the right foods. And you should activate it every day, because these psychic chemicals, phytochemicals, that are in the plants are what gives us the experience or the communion. Remember, the communion is a supper. And Jesus says he stands at the door and he knocks. And whoever will open the door, he'll come in and have fellowship. The word is also translated communion. And we will have communion with the Father and the Son and the angels, because they're all there. But the communion is by the psychoactive experience with the sacred meal. And this is the sacred food. It's not something we do only on Saturday or on, the Sabbath or in the temple or only a priest. Ultimately, this is the promise for every man. Those who got the secret, those who see the Lord and recognize him and partake. And he says, take ye, eat this. It's a commandment, guys. Jesus commanded us to partake. And those who will partake will see the Lord. And, friends, this is the part you have never been told. Not only will you have communion with the Lord and one another, because we are in a communal organization here as Christians, one with another, sharing everything we have. Not our wives, of course, but sharing our food and our love and our things, our brothers and our sisters, having all things common. It's not just about communion with the Lord, but it's a permanent communion. It's an opening of the chakras. It's the energies flowing. Remember, there are 7 fruits in the basket. And there are 7 chakras. And the crown chakra, we said, is the Arios Gamos. It is a wedding. So the only way to be truly one is to find your soulmate. And the only way to do that is to be pure. You got to have faith and add to that knowledge and add to that, brotherly love, and then add to that agape. Which, as far as humans, the only way we can attain unto it is to be at one. The atonement, which is something that has to do with a wedding. And at the wedding, there's a feast. Did you know that? Yeah, this universe, this world is a feast. It's telling you, this is what we do every day. You wake up every day and you garden and you get the feast. And you make love. Remember Solomon's garden, and he talking about this frankincense and this great love he had with this woman, the Queen of Sheba? Yeah, this is the story of our life. Every day, as a communal order, we partake of the fruits of the promised land and commune with the Lord. And we go from this carnal world that is dying, where we eat the food of labor until we die. By the sweat of our face we shall till the soil and eat lachem, which means cooked, processed, dead food, until we die. No fermentation, right? Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, right? That kills, that is dead food, right? We don't want the Passover that's dying and the bitter herbs. We want the first ripe fruits. Those fruits have mold. They ferment. They are joy. It's a celebration. It's Pentecost. And Pentecost is the day that the wedding is held, friends. The day of the great harvest. I guarantee it. So, here's the 7 things. There in verse 8, wheat and barley, vines, which would be grapes, fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil, and honey. Now, think about this. Just think about this. The protein and the bulk of this is in the wheat and the barley. Because the rest of it, like grapes and pomegranates, are probably going to be used for the wine. And then the olive oil we put in to make the loaf. And the honey, which, by the way, is hallucinatory honey, made from the daffodil. At the Temple of Artemis, it was about bees. It was about the Melissae, the honey bee, the queen bee. And literally, their priestesses were called Melissae. And their men priests were called Essenes. And this is the Essenes. And there was one group of Essenes there at the Dead Sea. And we've got their Zadokite priesthood, which is, again, the Melchizedek priesthood. And so the honey was also added to the sacrament. And it was a psychoactive thing because the bees made their honey from daffodils. You can also get the same kind of thing from bees when they make their honey from other flowers like rhododendrons and different other flowers. There's other kinds of flowers. The honey we buy today has all been hijacked. If you notice nowadays, all the bees are like in captivity. Like it's kind of like eating fish from a fish farm or a laboratory they make in it, right? It's not the actual fish from the wild caught. Well, wild honey is usually psychoactive because it's made from flowers that are, during that process, supposed to be enlightening. And you'll find stories of Jonathan in the Old Testament who reached out his sword and got some of the honey and partook of it, and his eyes were opened. Just like when the disciples ate from the honey and their eyes were opened. So these 7 things are not to be 7 different things, but they're to be combined in what we call the sacrament. So this is why some of these things are juice and honey and oil. Okay, you don't drink oil by itself. You put it into something, and you put the honey on top because the bread, you want it to be, tasty. So these are the 7 things in the basket that the world has no clue what it is, but we have just explained it, friends. And I am so excited that I can hardly contain myself. But we're over an hour, so we're going to leave it there. You guys, you got to tune into these videos because every day, I could be doing a video about current events or health or gardening or something. Or we might just be hiking. And we're going to be talking about these vital truths, things that if you will get all this information, all of it, your mind will put it together for you. And you're going to have a grand key. And it might be why there's not that many people watching this. Because maybe this information's only for those who truly want it. Anywho, I'm David Vose. I'm going to go ahead and go up there on the mountaintop behind the house, on the cliff, get this loaded. I sure love you guys. And the Lord is just waiting, just wishing that you'd talk to him. So, he loves everybody. We'll see you guys tomorrow. His grace will be with you. Have a good one.